Few days before the 2020 Lagos City Marathon, I locked myself up and was meditating on the race. This was the first time challenging myself to do something like this, and I wanted to be mentally prepared for the task ahead. The past 6 months had been about getting physically fit for the race. Now it was all about mental fitness, visualizing the goal, the project, the task ahead, visualizing the race day and the day before the race. What was my schedule going to be like the day before the race? Getting my kit set, pinning my bib on properly so that it doesn't fall off and doesn't disturb my run. What was I going to eat the day before the race? What time was I going to have to go to bed that day so that I could wake up early the following day? How much do I need to stay off my feet so that I can conserve my energy for the race ahead? Now, I also visualized the race day itself. What time was I going to have to wake up that day so that I could use the toilet, get set, and leave the house to be at the stadium on time for the race? Then I visualized running the race itself, what that would feel like. This entire process, Brenda Bouchard calls project planning. If you don't want to procrastinate on Monday, then make sure that you sit down and do your project plan on Sunday. This goes beyond just having a to-do list. It's about seeing the steps to the completion of that project. If your mind can't see the steps to the completion of that project, your heart will ask to pause. He goes on further to say, it's about asking ourselves, what's that project I want to accomplish? What are the things that are going to happen for that project to happen? What's the timeline for those things to happen? Now, the reason some of us procrastinate is because we don't see where we are going. It's hard to take a step when we don't see the complete picture. It's like putting a puzzle together. You will find out that the fastest and most productive time of putting that puzzle together is usually the last 20%. Because it's at that point that the picture becomes clearer, and with that clarity comes the eagerness to complete the puzzle. Now, this is why project planning is so important, and why 3 days before the 2020 Lagos City Marathon, all I was doing was project plan, visualizing the race, visualizing the task ahead, going over as much detail as I could in my mind. It was while project planning, visualizing, and meditating that this subtle voice floats in my head and says, you know that article on miracles that you did several years ago, right? This is it. Now, that article on miracles goes like this. God does not do magic, God works miracles. Magic usually occurs on the spur of the moment, but miracles are worked through deliberate steps. God requires your cooperation to work a miracle in your life. He has given you a mind so you can allow Him to rest. You have a part to play. So it's irresponsibility to place the duty of working of miracles on God alone. Now, I'm not talking about heaven helps those who help themselves. I'm talking about obeying God. What this simply means is that if the water in our lives is going to be turned into wine, then we have the responsibility to provide the water. If it's our desire to walk on water, then we have the responsibility to take a step out of the boat. If it's our desire to see the dreams of our heart come to pass, then we need to be willing to take a step out of the comfort zone. The principle is simply this: miracles follow those who take daring steps. Miracles follow those on the go. It's about having something that God can bless and multiply in the form of a skill, time, or relationship. To realize that if it's truly our desire to see miracles birth in our lives, then the question is, are we taking daring steps? Are we daring things that are bigger than us? Because here's the thing: normal steps, normal results. Big steps, big results. You don't catch a whale in the pond at the back of your house. You go to the deep blue sea. So there is no need praying for a whale of blessing if we aren't willing to go to the sea or the ocean. It's realizing that as we give God what we have and as we take those daring steps, we'll definitely see Him multiply and birth miracles in our lives. To realize that our lives aren't small, we are the ones living it in a small way. So what do? We open up our lives. We live openly. We live expansively. That is the article on miracles that I did several years ago. Specifically, I did that article in 2014, and here in 2020 was my opportunity to leave that article. I remember that voice saying to me that, Kayode, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity for a miracle to happen in your life. Several weeks before that, what happened was that I was speaking with my mentor, and he says to me, referring to the Jesus walking on water story, that Jesus is walking on water, right? Peter sees him and says to him, Lord, if it's you, say to me, come. Now Jesus says, come. Scripture records that Peter takes a step out of the boat, walks some steps on water before he starts to sink out of fear. But the interesting thing is that that instruction, come, that Jesus gives wasn't necessarily just reserved for Peter alone. Any of the other disciples could have dared to act on that instruction, could have recorded a miracle if they were only willing to take a step out of the boat. But they didn't. At the end of the day, it was only Peter who dared to take a step and became part of a miracle because of his willingness to act, to take a step on that instruction. Now, a day before the marathon, I was all alone in the room praying and meditating and saying, Lord, this is it. This is my opportunity. This is my moment. I believe that as I take a step, as I obey this, your instruction to run the marathon, this desire that you have implanted in my heart, I believe that as I obey this instruction, that miracles will be birthed in my life and in the lives of others. Now, someone will say, but you didn't win the marathon. You didn't get the $50,000 prize. Now, I remember God saying to me that I will give you something more than $50,000. If only you will realize that there are precious gems for you to mine out of this marathon experience. If you take a closer look and don't commonize the experience like a soldier carrying a very powerful weapon but with weak hands. Now that's what it's about. It's about our willingness to take a step. It's not necessarily about winning or coming first, but our willingness to run. Our willingness to take a step, because that's the only way miracles happen, because miracles follow those people who take daring steps. And that as we take the very first step, what happens? We gain the strength to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next, until you know what? We have taken 100 steps, and then 1,000, and then 10,000, and then before you know it, we have taken 1,000,000 steps until we get to the end, the finish line of that goal or that project. And that's exactly how I ran, not just ran, but finished the 2020 Lagos City Marathon, my very first marathon, because of my willingness to act, to take a step on the desire that God had placed in my heart. Now, it's one thing for us to say that we believe in miracles. It's another thing for us to place ourselves in a situation or within an area or environment, where a miracle can be birthed in our lives. Because here's the thing, are we taking daring steps? If we say we truly desire miracles, then are we daring the impossible? Are we daring things that are bigger than us? Are we willing to step into shoes and capacities that seem bigger than our capabilities right now? If many of us will be sincere with ourselves, what we are really looking for isn't miracles, we are looking for magic. It's magic that happens, that produces big things without any input or effort on our part. But at the end of the day, what do we discover? that those big things, those gargantuan things, are just trickery, illusions, temporary band-aids, shortcuts, and entertainment. If we are looking for the real big and lasting stuff, the miracles, then we need to be willing to put ourselves out there and take those daring steps. To live a life of no excuses, a life where we go on to crush our goals, exceed limits, break barriers, and go on to be a pleasant surprise to not just the people around us, but to ourselves. It's helpful to remember that when we do the very best that we can do, we have no idea the kind of miracles that are birthed in our lives and in the lives of others. It's about taking that step, taking that willingness to take that step, even when we don't see the entire staircase, but the willingness to take the very first step in faith. And here's what happens. As we take that very first step in faith, as we dare to act boldly in the direction of our dreams and in our desires, what happens is that unseen positive forces come to our rescue. As we get to the edge of the light of all that we know, and we are about to take a step into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing that one of two things will definitely happen. Either we will find something solid to stand on, or we will be taught to fly.